So here we're looking at the concept of a deflationary gap. Now, deflationary gap is a situation in which our equilibrium level of income, excuse me, our equilibrium level of income is at a point below full employment. So what it means is our economy is in a state where we're being inefficient with our labor resource. We have people who want to work and who are looking for jobs, but can't find that employment. So our equilibrium level of income, which also represents our nation's production, is below full employment. So let's take this scenario here. Economists predict that full employment, so YF, full employment, to be reached at an income of 600. So we go here, income 600. We go up to our 45-degree line. And there, we now find full employment, YF, full employment. As we can see, this is a deflationary gap because equilibrium level of income is below full employment. This economy is being inefficient with its labor resource. So here's our deflationary gap, this space here. Now we really want to try and close this gap to make our economy more efficient. This gap needs to be closed. Now, if we have a look, the value of our deflationary gap here is 400 and 600. So the value of our deflationary gap is 200. That's the difference between 400 and 600. So Keynesian economics teaches us. It teaches us that an increase in spending will result in an increase in income. Now, the ratio in which, okay, so how much spending is going to result in how much income was derived back from our multiplier. So we've got to bring the multiplier equation back. So 1 divided by 1 minus the MPC. So if we have a look here, our MPC can be found in our consumption function. Now that's the B value, or the MPC of our consumption function. So it'll be 1 divided by 1 minus 0.5, which gives us 1 divided by 0.5, which gives us a multiplier of 2. So in this situation, our multiplier is 2. What that tells us is for every additional $1 spent will result in additional $2 of national income. And we want to close this gap, so we want to definitely increase income. So now we can put together a little bit of an algebraic formula. Now at this point, I just want to stop and say your teacher may have shown you a different way of working out how to close this gap, and that's fine. But here's just what I've shown my classes, just as a way of finding out how we close this gap. So what I like to do is take your multiplier. In this scenario, your multiplier is 2. You need some unknown additional investment. So I'm going to represent that unknown with an X. And this X represents that unknown additional investment or spending that we need in order to close this gap. And the gap, so equals to the deflationary gap of 200. So whatever your gap is. So to find this additional investment or spending that we need, let's get that on its own. So let's divide both sides by the multiplier so we can cancel this out. And that will give us the additional investment or spending that we need will be 100. 200 divided by 2. This might take the form of additional government spending. So how about let's go with that for now. This is an additional government spending of 100. So we go back to our graph here and we say, okay, let's increase spending by 100. So let's go from 200 up to 300. That's additional spending of 100 there. There's our little X value. What we should now find, if you grab your ruler out, is that point should now intersect full employment point, and that is your aggregate demand 1. That's your consumption, investment, and now additional government spending, which now hits the 45-degree line at full employment, which means here's an economy where they're fully utilizing their labor resource, where everyone who wants a job can find a job. Okay, now full employment always, it always considers the fact that you'll never have everyone working. So we're not being naive. There'll always be people who are either, for some reason outside of the labor force or in the labor force and simply unable to work. But here's an economy closer to full employment. Okay, so here what we found, deflationary gap, when our equilibrium level of income is below full employment. We've then closed this gap going back to the multiplier using this little algebraic equation to find that unknown amount of additional spending needed in order to shift our aggregate demand curve up, therefore closing the deflationary gap and reaching full employment. So there we go, a little bit of a podcast on deflationary gaps and how to solve them.